Welcome to the Times of Industry show, and I'm here with another great guest from the cryptocurrency space. Amanda Johnson is the host, and she's the writer of the YouTube series Dashed Detail, and she's a currency protocol researcher, having written for Bitcoin Magazine, Cointelegraph, Bitcoinist, and Bitcoin.com. Amanda, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you, Lior?
I'm very well. I'm glad you're with us, and I want to jump here and ask you some basic questions, and then go and ask you some more advanced questions for the people who are listening and are already investors in Bitcoin or Dash or some of the other coins, and want to get your take. You live and breathe this stuff every day, so. The first question that we have about Dash, obviously, is if it has any chance of becoming something similar to Bitcoin, something wrong must be happening with Bitcoins for a competitor to surpass it. So, in your understanding, what is currently wrong or faulty with this Bitcoin software and the Bitcoin community today?
Sure. Well, I don't think it's a surprising thing that the first version of a brand new technology is not the one that ends up being the most used, say 10 years or 20 years after the creation. I mean, we can think back to, the first airplane or the first web browser or the first automobile or any of these sorts of things. And we see that quite often, the team that churns out version 1 is not the team that is still version or being the most used in 10 years or something. So I used to be invested in only Bitcoin. And for me, the process of switching my investment to Dash was a gradual one. I would say it was over this course of a year that I made the full switch. And for me, the process happened during my daily research. As you mentioned in my intro, I've written for various cryptocurrency outlets, research pieces, news pieces, what have you. And I also used to do a daily YouTube show called The Daily Decrypt, where I did interviews and, again, analysis pieces via video for the various digital currencies competing in this space. And so, having looked at these various protocols, I started to create categories in my mind so that I could compare them with one another. Some of the categories in my mind were initially, I call it trajectory of infrastructure, which is a fancy way of saying with the incentives and disincentives in place, is the node count of this network likely to grow over time, or is it likely to shrink over time? Another of the categories I chose was independence of development, meaning is this a development team that has to go to third parties and ask for grants or donations or that sort of thing? Or do they have their own source of funding that comes from their own coin itself? What I'm saying is, do they allocate a portion of their block reward to pay for their own development, to prevent them from having to serve the interests of outside parties in order to get grants and donations and things? And so on and on, in forming these categories in my mind, another of them, perhaps most important, being governance, meaning who gets to make decisions in this network? Are those the most proper people to be making decisions? And how quickly can those people make decisions, et cetera, et cetera? Dash really started to just stand out to me as a network that was checking all of the boxes that I had created for myself. And so over the course of a year, pretty much for every week that there was no resolution to the sort of Bitcoin governance crisis, which just so happens to be about block size, but could be about anything else. For every week that went by that there wasn't a resolution there, I would just switch some Bitcoin into Dash. And over a year, eventually I had no more Bitcoin left and it was all Dash. And I've been very happy with that investment and switch. And so I see Dash's trajectory as continuing to go in a direction that I do believe will surpass Bitcoin. And I see Bitcoin's trajectory as continuing to fall into a sort of the sides will remain just as split as ever, and they'll become more and more split. And eventually, we haven't seen that reflected in the price yet, which surprises me. But a lot of things about price in the crypto space surprise me. But I don't think it's good. And I do believe that if any of these digital currencies works, meaning if they don't all eventually go to zero because none of this stuff is actually workable in the long term, I do believe that Dash or something like Dash will be the one that pulls through.
Very interesting. Could Dash overtake Litecoin as Bitcoin's biggest competitor, even if Litecoin implements SegWit? And before you take that question, could you explain real quick what is SegWit?
Sure. So, like I said, I don't do heavy research into these sorts of things that are happening into Bitcoin anymore. To my understanding, SegWit is a short term for something called segregated witness, which is basically a restructuring of the way that data is recorded in the Bitcoin blockchain. And the only seeming benefit that I've heard of restructuring the way the data is recorded is that it would save some space. And then, of course, that's one camp's argument. And then the other camp's argument is, well, we wouldn't need to restructure the data if we just increase the block size cap, And I don't think that either of those arguments is a compelling one, because the only way digital currencies won't have been a bubble and a sort of tulip mania is if this stuff can get in the hands of average people and they can find it useful enough and intuitive enough and trusted enough that they are actually willing to ditch their dollars for it, or ditch their pesos, or ditch their rubles. Like, that is the end game, and that's the only end game that counts. And so, yeah, like, the dream is to get one of these digital currencies on your mom's smartphone, and she doesn't know about cryptography. She doesn't know about blockchains. What's more, she doesn't care. And guess what? Do you think she will care if there's something called SegWit running in the background or not? No, she won't care. So if Litecoin implements SegWit, great. Awesome. But will that help Litecoin get into the hands of your mother and on her smartphone, and actually compelling enough for her to ditch PayPal and use it instead? Absolutely not.
Interesting. So could Dash overtake Litecoin as the biggest competitor for Bitcoin? Your answer would be absolutely yes.
That's what I'm betting. Yeah. Sure.
Now, why do so many altcoins exist?
Well, I mean, probably for two reasons. One is that you can create them for almost no cost, right? Not to say that the good ones are created without significant, human capital behind them. But I could create an altcoin today within probably 30 minutes or something. And so
cost of entry is nothing. That's why that's right. One of the reasons. Okay.
That's one of the reasons. But what is the other reason that there's real money behind a lot of these competitors to Bitcoin? I mean, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions to dollars. I mean, that we're competing for such a large market. So there's such a large apple in front of us. There's such a big incentive to create a coin that you try to, it's your horse that you put in the race. On the chance that your horse wins, if it's good enough, if your team and your design is good enough, I mean, the rewards are unspeakably massive. I mean, creating a currency that actually gets used as a currency, that's incentive enough to sit down at the computer for 30 minutes and churn something out. So yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, especially going into the mind of a designer or a person who is obsessed with the web and with blockchain. Coming up with your own currency would be your dream coming true. Why the name change for Dash from Darkcoin?
Sure. Yeah, so it was Darkcoin for roughly the first year that it existed. Our network launched in January of 2014. We have a Bitcoin code base. So one of the things we benefit from is that for every person who has tried to hack Bitcoin, right, who has tried to break SHA-256 or whatever, although we're not SHA-256, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have made that parallel, but rather any attack that's been performed on Bitcoin's code base has also been performed on our code base, which is nice that we can benefit from that. And then the name change came about in early 2015 as a result of, I mean, I've read a bit through the forum posts about it, not a lot, but it seems like just enough people said, you know what, we want to be the digital cash that people's moms use. We want to be the digital cash that anyone uses. So we need to have a nice, easy to remember, friendly name that doesn't sound nerdy or weird or scary. And so, kick the word Darkcoin out the door. And I think they had, I don't remember if they had a contest or if just community members did some brainstorming. But however it happened, someone came up with the word Dash as a portmanteau of the words digital cash. And that's what they went with. And I think it's really nice.
Definitely nicer to Darkcoin that has sinister, associations in your mind. Which is faster to send, Dash or Litecoin?
So Dash and Litecoin have the same block times, which is roughly 2.5 minutes. But Dash offers what we call a feature called instant send. We may be the only coin to offer this, which is what we can do in nerd speak is we can lock the inputs of any transaction that you broadcast to the network in just about 1 second or less. And that means that as soon as the receiving party receives your broadcast, rather than having to wait for even one confirmation, much less 3, some exchanges, they make you wait for 3, even 6 confirmations. But with instant send, since the inputs are locked, the receiving party can have confidence in that transaction immediately. Like you can part ways with that person immediately, because what instant send does is it prevents the possibility of double spend. I cannot rebroadcast those inputs back to myself before the next block comes out. So some people say it's Dash's killer app. It enables us to have point of sale, or it doesn't even have to be point of sale. Yes, it can be a cup of coffee in the real world. I pay you, then I walk away. You don't have to worry about getting double spent. But even like some exchanges have started implementing Dash Instant Send because customers like it, because as soon as the customer sends the Dash in Instant Send, he can start trading. He doesn't have to wait for 3 confirmations or 6 confirmations. He can just start. And that's the speed of commerce. That's the speed of the real world. And it's one of crypto's, or rather Dash's, biggest advantages over the banking system.
What are the other benefits of Dash over other cryptocurrencies and over obviously the banking system itself?
Sure. So when Dash was first started as Darkcoin in early 2014, its first hey, let's get this done feature was privacy on the blockchain if you want it. And the way we're able to achieve this is by basically creating uncertainty sets on the blockchain of where your coins actually are. So if you were to send me your Dash address so I could send you a tip or something, Lior, so I would know that in that address, the dash that I sent you, that dash belongs to you. So the problem that cryptocurrency has to solve, and most of them aren't, is how do we make it so that wherever those coins go in the future, whether you send them to, a savings wallet that you have, or whether you send them to your brother, or whether you, buy hemorrhoid cream with them or something, right? Like something you don't want me to know because it's none of my business. How can we make that so? And so in Dash, your core wallet has a button in it, and that button is called Private Send Mix. You can choose to mix any amount of Dash that you have by pressing this button. And once you press the button, what happens on the back end is your Dash is broken up into lots of small denominations. And then your wallet talks to the rest of the network and basically finds others who are also looking to mix their own denominations. And it begins swapping out the addresses of where those Dash end up, so that by the end of some mixing, your Dash, Lior, could be in any of thousands of addresses.
Basically, it's the same as if I wrote on a $100 bill, Lior, come and find me, and it's I pay somebody with it. It goes on forever and ever. If it comes back to me, then I see, oh my God, that's the same dollar, that's the same $100 bill that I paid with few months ago. But if it doesn't come back to me, the feeling I get is the feeling that someone would get with that mix, where he doesn't know where that bill ended up where is now currently.
Right, because you would never be able to like write on it, to use your analogy. It's what we call fungibility, in that after they've been mixed, all units of Dash have exactly zero traceable history.
Got it. That's very interesting. Well, is there other benefits that are very noticeable? Yeah. Well, I mean, just speaking from personal experience, I know that anytime I've ever sent a payment of Dash to someone, sent it from my private balance, I feel safer in that I don't feel that I've just revealed information to that person that may potentially be compromising to me. Sure. That's understandable. What if?
I mean, it's just like, if someone were to come up to you and say, "How much money do you have in your bank account, and which bank do you use?" That's like a threatening thing to ask, and so you want to be able to get rid of those threats on a ledger, because it's the same. Banks keep ledgers, and they keep your secrets for you sometimes, for the most part. And so Dash wanted to present a ledger where we can keep your secrets for you as well, because that's how money works.
Sure. What if someone made an improved Dash, took Dash, made it better? How soon would it take over? And what would you do personally if that happens?
Sure. So this is the world of open source. So like you said, as soon as any bit of code is published, anybody is free to copy and paste that, right? And so where the advantages lie then, if you can't, if you don't keep secrets, if you don't, try to patent and copyright your code base and keep it a big secret, your advantage then lies in being the first to market, because that is how you attract the first wave of human capital. And as long as you can look around at your competitors and see if any of them have anything that you yourself should copy and paste and merge into your own code base, you can keep that first wave of human capital. So to use your scenario of, what if someone built a better Dash? They may well. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if they did. However, we would then have the opportunity to copy whatever improvement they just made. And we're already $500 million ahead of them in market cap in that scenario. And when I say market cap, what I'm referencing is the humans in our network, the trust that we have gained over the last 3 years. So I hope someone builds a better Dash so that we can merge their improvements. So the thing to do is to remain nimble and humble. For example, Bitcoin could copy everything Dash has ever done, but they won't. They could, but they won't. So the thing is to remain nimble and humble enough to see if your competitors have anything that you should copy. And if you don't, if you're not humble, for example, if someone made a better dash and our network did not choose to up our game to compete with them, I would sell my dash for the other coin. Probably not all at once, like I said, because with Bitcoin to dash, it took me over a year because, just time and study, making sure things pan out like you thought they would. But I absolutely would not be averse to switching to another coin. Like, I'm not in this for the name or, the tribalism or the emotions. I'm in it for what's the best coin.
And what would be the price and demand for Dash, say 1 year, 2 years into the future, if Bitcoin does solve its problems? And what if it doesn't?
Well, I mean, I tend to think that so as I had mentioned earlier, switching one's dollars for magic internet money or, any other what is called a fiat currency is a pretty big deal. Like, it's a pretty big thing to do. I don't remember my grandparents having the option. Nor did their grandparents before them have this sort of option of,
it's actually a change in the way of life. It is. It's intimidating. It's not like that easy to do unless you've been listening to interviews and studying this for a few years. It's not like an instant decision to do with a large sum of money.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And so I tend to think that a digital currency, the space in general, I think we'll either have like a clear winner or a clear, 2 or 3 winners. And they really do go just completely global and just reinvent money for most of the world's people. In which case, I mean, how can I even put a price tag on that? Basically, let's just say we wouldn't be denominating crypto coins in dollars anymore.
Sure.
We would be denominating everything in crypto coins. Like that's how far away the moon is. That's how big of a shot the moon is. I see it being that or zero. And like, hey, that was a fun experiment. Maybe we lost, well, not everybody would have lost money. Some people would have made it, but it would have been a fun experiment, and there we go. So if Dash can get something right, we're calling our forthcoming PayPal feeling product, we're calling it Evolution. It's set for public release at the end of this year, 2017. And if we can get that into the hands of, like maybe the best early markets are, like the unbanked, who people talk about, who people in Bitcoin used to talk about before Bitcoin fees became so high that unbanked microtransactions became just completely cost prohibitive. So maybe those are the best and earliest markets, or it's what seems most likely to happen, and then maybe from there, that spreads to the more banked countries, and what was I even saying? Oh yeah, so if we can achieve that, then what was the exact question, Lior? I was getting at something.
You were talking about the launch of the Dash Evolution, but prior to that, we just discussed the fact that this either goes global and has 2 or 3 big denominations, or it was just a fun experience and you think it might zero out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think it has to be one or the other. I don't see the crypto space staying in this sort of experimentation limbo phase for very long, because as they are, cryptocurrencies aren't that useful. Like, I went grocery shopping yesterday. I would love to have been able to pay in Dash, but guess what? I can't. So what do I have to do to buy groceries? I have to find someone who wants to buy my Dash for dollars. And so it's almost a little bit inconvenient to hold them right now. And so the only way this is not going to go to zero is if at some point I can buy my groceries with Dash. Otherwise, why the hell would I want to own it?
Sure. Well, there's other reasons why people own cryptocurrencies besides the convenience of it. It's obviously it's a quick way to move money around the world, and the privacy it offers, etc. It's outside the system, so it might not zero out even if it doesn't become a mainstream global phenomenon. It might stay on as just a viable means of storing some of your fiat savings. But anyways, that's my opinion of it. What would you suggest for somebody who comes in light of what you said? You said it either goes exceptionally well or it doesn't. What would you recommend to somebody with $1 million? And what would you recommend to somebody with $1,000? Yeah,
I mean, I would probably never recommend anything to anybody because I don't know. All I can do is present. I consider myself a researcher, and so if anyone asks, all I can do is present the research that I have done and then say what I did.
Let me rephrase. What if you had $1 million?
Yeah, I mean, Dash is where I would put it. Yes. I don't see, and that's because I think long term, right? I think there's a general sentiment in the crypto space that there's viable applications for blockchains that don't have currency as the base app. And I disagree with that sentiment. Let me explain. So you've heard maybe ideas of like, oh, a blockchain where we store health records, or a blockchain where we store, like movies and music, or a blockchain for this, a blockchain for that. And I don't think that those are viable ideas unless they're built on top of blockchains whose base token is already used as a money that buys groceries. Why? Because blockchain networks require an incentivized infrastructure for their security. Without a large, sprawling, incentivized infrastructure, that's a ledger that can get either messed with or just taken down entirely. And so how do you get a large incentivized infrastructure? Well, you pay the people running your infrastructure with something that they can buy their groceries with. Because, for example, you consider yourself a miner. Now, you are a miner, you have cheap electricity, you have access to hardware, and you can mine on one of two networks. Network A is Network A pays you in tokens that will pay your mortgage, pay your kids' tuition, buy your groceries, and Network B pays you in whatever coins, which in order for you to use them have to be switched over to the tokens on Network A. I just think it's a no-brainer. Like people would always rather be paid in money rather than be paid in not money or a substitute money, something. It's just everyone prefers liquidity. Cash is king.
I can tell you how I see it. It's like when you have a birthday and you either risk the fact that people will come in with gifts that you don't want, or they can give you cash. Now, obviously, courtesy is you'd like gifts, but on a more useful sense, you would like just the cash and do what you want to do with it.
Exactly. You said it perfectly. It's like, do I want to get paid money or do I want to get paid with gift cards that have the same denomination of that money? Well, of course, you want the money, not the gift cards.
Sure. Well, just out of being social and polite, you would never say that to anyone, but you would think that. Amanda, where would people come in and check out your work? This has to be the one of the funnest and greatest interviews I've been a part of. So where can people kind of check out more of your work?
Yeah, please. You can just visit dashdetailed.com, or if you want to bypass my website, just type in the words Dash Detailed on YouTube, and it will bring up everything I've ever made. I publish a video every Wednesday and every Friday. Wednesday's show is a news update about all the new happenings in Dash, be it price movement, businesses, and headlines. code development, that sort of thing. And then Friday's show is an interview show with any of the various human faces that are behind the Dash network, because I am but one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks, Leor.